Okay? It looks like it ends because there's a big calamity, like you have pole shifts and things like that. But we survive, or at least not us, but the planet survives. So entropy is an interesting theory. It's a chaos theory, but they're referring to the chaos of creating another Big Bang, not just ending everything. It's not Armageddon, okay? Now, I want to cover a few more specifics here about going into the future and about future technology. And then I want to open it up for some of the more heavy questions here before we do our lunch break. When we come back from lunch, we're going to be doing a lot of hypnosis into various exercises. So let me just complete a couple of thoughts here about the future. Now, I told you a little bit about, discussed some of the future technology of the 35th century, but let's talk a little bit about the next 20 years. You know, we've gone through a lot of, they say scientific knowledge doubles every 3 to 5 years these days, and we have unbelievable technology today. But there are far more significant things to come. All right, there's a discipline called Mechanotronics. This is what we call mechanical and electrical engineering, resulting in the ability to produce every body part electronically. In other words, you can replace lost livers, kidneys, lungs, etc. We will be able to extract the last image a person sees before they die. So let's say, for example, in the future, not too far distant future, you're not going to have a lot of people committing murder. And let me show you why. Let's say you go into a convenience store and you're going to buy something, and somebody shoots and kills you, and you look at them right in the face. So let's say the person shoots you and kills you, and you see them, you look them right in the face, and you die. In the next 20 years, they'll be able to extract that last image from your eye, so that the police, when they do their research, do their investigation, they'll have a complete picture of the person who murdered you. And with technology today, if you got a facial picture of somebody who did something, they can identify you immediately, because everybody gets their picture taken, right? Digital records, etc. So that's an interesting concept of mechanotronics here. You're also going to have 3D television with holograms, which will be used for video conferencing. You know, today you can do a video conference by computer. Like I do Skype sessions, like I do therapy sessions with people on computer with a video cam. But this is beyond that. Let's say you're in a corporate conference room and you want to contact your headquarters or people around the country, around the world. Not only will you be able to see them and hear them, you'll be able to send a hologram figure of you into the room. Okay? How's that? It works great with masseuses too, you know. That's real technology for the future. Computers will be so sophisticated that they'll be able to write their own software programs and design other computers. Computers will also be linked to biological sense organs. This is how we're going to solve Alzheimer problems and some of the other neurological and other mental problems that are more organically based, dementia, etc. So these computers can be that sophisticated. I was reading yesterday at breakfast, I was reading your local paper, and they were talking about, they're thinking of developing a computer program that predicts you. In other words, let's say that it's late in the evening, and normally you would go to a movie. The computer would know your history, so it would send you like a little email and says, I think you would like to go to see this film at the so-and-so theater. They're working on that now. That's your local paper, okay? But in the future, it's going to be far more sophisticated, far more, especially when it comes to medicine. Now, we're going to have a manned mission to Mars within 20 years. A moon base will be established, if it's not already there, definitely within the next 20 years. And you're going to have what we call subliminal learning. You know, they've tried over many years to have, like, you know, people would play tapes at night to try to learn a language, things like that. But the subliminal learning is going to be far more sophisticated than that. So you'll be able to, while a person is not focusing on information being given to them, they could be doing something else. We're going to use subliminal techniques, and they'll be able to learn various disciplines, etc., which will speed up our educational system. So this is all within the next 20 years. It's pretty sophisticated, and it gets better. So, like I say, the future is bright. I just want to report a couple of other cases, a couple of other things here too. This is, I mentioned this in the Friday night talk. This is a very, one of my favorite examples about the future are people who actually have perceived accurately the future. Now, if you ever have read the works of Nostradamus, one of my favorite people from 500 years ago. Nostradamus was a brilliant man, a brilliant psychic. He was a physician. If you know his history, he's a brilliant guy. And he wrote these quatrains, these 1,000 quatrains, 4-line quatrains, which depicted future events. Now, a lot of people make fun of him, and the media makes fun of him. But if you analyze his work carefully, it's unbelievable. He named Hitler. He talked about Napoleon. He talked about the Kennedy brothers, JFK, RFK, their assassination. I mean, the guy's amazing. All right, so obviously he saw into the future, and accurately. Well, here's a case of, since I'm a writer, I don't read a lot of novels, but this novel would be very, very, very relevant here. In 1898, a man named Morgan Robertson wrote a novel called Futility. And in this novel, remember, 1898, the theme of the novel was an ocean liner on its maiden voyage carrying the elite population, or elite crew, or passengers, of 2 continents, hits an iceberg and sinks into the water. People die. Lots of people die. This ocean liner, according to Morgan Robertson in his 1898 novel, was 800 feet long, weighed 70,000 tons, and unfortunately had too few lifeboats. By the way, he named his boat the Titan. 14 years later, in 1912, in April, the Titanic left London to America, going to New York, and on its maiden voyage, 800 feet long, 70,000 tons with too few lifeboats, sunk, and 1,000 of the 3,000 passengers drowned. How did Morgan Robertson know that? He was intimately accurate. This is not a coincidence. If you do the math about the probability, about that being just statistically, forget it, okay? Morgan Robertson, 1898. No one's ever heard of him. I mentioned that. No one's ever heard of Morgan Robertson. The novel wasn't made into a movie. But that's an intimate example. And there are many other examples in history, but this is something I think is kind of fun. Just to review again a little bit about, I did this yesterday, but we're going to be doing the hypnosis after the lunch break. Just again, people ask me about when they see TV demonstrations like we just showed the DVD. Don't compare yourself to other people when it comes to their hypnosis. Obviously, a producer on a television show, a network show especially, wants me, or anybody like me, to bring their very best patients, very best cases of dramatic examples, true, but they also want, when you're doing a demonstration, to have people who are going to be emotional. So naturally they choose women. That's why you see all women on these shows, okay? Not because I don't have male patients, I do, but women are better television subjects because they're more emotional. And also the audience that watches the TV shows are women. Probably 75% of the people who watch a daytime talk show are women, okay? So they want to give their people the mentality. So, and again, it's not that they're better people. Anybody can do what they do, but maybe the responses are different. Your responses may not be as detailed as them, or you may not be as emotional. See, I don't care about the emotions. The emotions don't solve the problem. It's the energy that's the issue. But television doesn't understand that. All they think of, we want people to cry on television, you know? I mean, that's their mentality. So please do not compare yourself to either a television depiction, obviously I'm showing very dramatic cases to illustrate it, nor some people here. There are people here who will do very deep level hypnosis and go into, you've heard some of the examples yesterday, and there are people who will be very light and superficial. That's just who you are. There's nothing wrong with that, because you can attain the results and the therapeutic cleansings and all the good stuff in any level of trance. And why is it important? Just think of the big picture. It doesn't matter whether you're a light, medium, or deep level subject, okay? That's only 1% of therapy. Remember what I said. I'll repeat it again. 99% of your therapy occurs in your dream levels at night when you're out of the body on the upper astral plane with your higher self. When you're out of the body in the REM cycle, you are in a somnambulistic hypnotic trance. Your body is basically paralyzed. You are in a deep hypnotic trance that it would take an act of Congress to get you out of, all right? So don't worry about it. If you're light and superficial, who cares? So maybe you won't be a good television subject. Don't worry about it, okay? There are other things in the world to do. The point is you can get the benefits of the therapy, okay? Now, just again, with the hypnosis experiences, remember, what you see on television, especially in my case definitely, are the people who are what we call the audio-visual receivers. This is not a common experience. Maybe 15 to 20% of the population can do this. In other words, what I mean by audio-visual, in their mind they're seeing a scene, they're visualizing something, and they're having information come in, right? That's the best response, but that's not common. So don't expect that. The majority of people, and this includes yourselves here, will get what we call the quick cloudy impression. Maybe you'll get a little flash of something, a computer scan of your subconscious, and then you'll get some information coming in. But it won't be a continuous visual imagery at all. That's called a quick cloudy impression. That's the most common. That's probably 75% of people get that. Then you have the people who are just audio. They just get information. They don't see anything. It's black. But they get information. Oh, I'm in Kansas. It's 1821 or whatever, whatever it is. Those are the three that are the most common. That represents about 98% of responses with regression and progression. Now, the other two are very rare. The ones that they sense a whispering in their ear. Maybe it's their higher self or a spirit guide doing that. Very, very rare response, but it happens. They're not crazy. They're not psychotic. They're simply just experiencing that form of experience of information. And the last type, which is even the rarest, is they have, like, if they close their eyes, numbers will flash inside their eye, like 1850 or something, and that's how they get the information. They don't see anything other than that, and they don't get any other information funneling in. They just get little quick images. Those are the 5 ways to experience regression or progression. The majority of it will be quick cloudy impressions. And some people may just strictly get the audio, just information. Fine, it doesn't matter. Remember, the information isn't important anyway. What's important, and the only thing that's important, is the connection with the higher self. Okay.
Yeah, Doctor, actually I really agree with your things, what you are telling about the future. But I have experienced this teleportation experience about 5 years back when I undergone an Australian master, Mr. Alton Camden. He has conducted a Melchizedek method program. Actually, I have attended somewhere here in Hotel Ashoka.
Tell me about your teleportation experience.
Yeah, that's wonderful actually. See, he told me to go to the place where he wants to go. That is all predestined place. And he said, you please go around and come back to me and report to me what has happened.
Okay.
Then you see, I planned my program. I have just called my astral body. Then with that, you see, I started moving. I have visited my place. It is somewhere around 3:30 in the afternoon. I observed my son is about 12 years. That guy was watching a cartoon movie. Then my wife was sleeping. Then you see, I went to my favorite temple that is close to Bangalore. There actually some rituals was going on. That was actually temple was closed. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then I had gone around the temple and I was to enter near close to the deity. I am not able to reach. I think most probably my wavelength or my soul is not so pure to reach that area. Then I came back. Then afterwards I have verified with my family. It was a fact. Actually, you see. Okay, now I
have a question now. Yes. Was it your physical body that was moving?
No, my astral body.
Okay,
actually,
now that's not teleportation, so let me explain.
All right.
This is called a bilocation.
Okay.
What this means, and I explained this in the Exploring the Fifth Dimension book in detail, and my Astral Voyages book, bilocation means that you're sending out your astral body, it's your spiritual body. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay. I'm talking about the physical body leaving this spot and going miles and miles away. Okay. That's teleportation. What you're talking about is an out-of-body experience, or remote viewing is what they would call
that. That is astral travel, you mean to say?
Astral travel.
Right.
There are many names for it, but it's not teleportation. Teleportation is the physical body. Now, for example, I was on a radio show with my famous Coast to Coast thing one night, and there's a lot of callers call in, and this woman says, "Doctor, I want to tell you my experience." Now, she lives in Las Vegas, Nevada, which is about 250 miles from Los Angeles. And she said that she had an experience one night where she was in her home in Las Vegas, and the next thing she knows, she's in the Los Angeles County Museum on Wilshire Boulevard. It's a beautiful museum. And I said, okay. And she goes, was I out of the body? What was going on? And I said, tell me about your experience. And she goes, well, I found myself in the museum, and I noticed I didn't have any shoes on. My feet were bare, and I could feel the cold floor of the museum. And I said, well, guess what? You weren't out of the body. She goes, I wasn't? I said, no, you teleported. Because when you teleport, you feel the cold floor. Your astral body doesn't feel a cold floor. So that's how you can tell whether it's your spiritual body or your physical body. So she goes, oh my. And I said, yes, you teleported. And you went back. Now see, people teleport sometimes in their dream levels. When they go to sleep at night, sometimes you may wake up and your wife or husband isn't there. And they're not necessarily in the sutra bar here. Sometimes they teleport. Teleportation has been, every ancient culture talks about teleportation. Your religion, believe me, mentions teleportation big time. But so do the Chinese, so do the Japanese, so do Europeans, so do the Russians. It's all over the world. Again, when you have when you have an experience that everybody around the world or every major country experiences, then there's something to it. For example, in the Old Testament, they talk about the flood, Noah's Ark, right? Well, I don't believe the whole world went underwater a couple of thousand years ago or 5,000 years ago, but every ancient culture, every culture in the world reports floods. In their probably local area, and they were probably severe. So we know that Noah's story, at least part of it, at least the fact that there was a flood, was true. Not to the extent that it's reported there. The whole world wasn't underwater. If it rains for 40 days and 40 nights, it's just, it's one of your monsoons, okay? It's not going to put the place underwater. But the fact that floods are reported by every culture is significant, all right? Because that means that people observe it. And supposedly they had no communication. As I mentioned before, Whately's law of evidence. If everybody reports the same thing and they don't communicate with each other, it must be true. They don't just make it up, okay? Good point, though. Yes?
Yeah, through the teleportation, physically we can go anywhere as per you, right?
Anywhere, not only here in the planet, but anywhere in the universe.
Okay, universe. See, for example, when we go through the teleportation as a physical body, okay, if something goes wrong because we are very much visible to anybody, and because physically we will have a touch, so something goes wrong with that body, what happens?
Well, it's the same body. It's not a different body. We're talking about, you have to separate bilocation from teleportation. In bilocation, it's your astral or spiritual body. If your spiritual body had a problem, it wouldn't affect you unless it was your etheric body. Your etheric body is necessary for life. See, when you go to different dimensions, we have I'll just keep it simple, like you have the astral plane, the mental plane, the causal, the etheric plane. These are different dimensions. And the Indian literature mentions those names too. Okay, so when you go to the astral plane, you travel there in your astral body. When you go to the etheric plane, you travel in your etheric body, okay? All these spiritual bodies hang around the earth body. Now, the etheric body is the only spiritual body that's identical to the physical body. So if anything happened to the etheric body, you would die. It never happens that way, but it can, theoretically. Now, the astral body, which people are most familiar with, is usually taller, thinner, and younger looking, which is why women like astral bodies. But true, the astral body is similar to what you look like, but it is different, okay? But again, don't worry about it. Now, a spiritual body is not the problem. When you teleport, your physical body is leaving that space and moving somewhere else. Nobody has ever been harmed by teleportation. You don't teleport in the middle of a rock or in the ocean and drown. That's never happened in my research or the literature that I'm aware of. When you teleport to an actual physical location and you're there. But let me give you an example how it can be a problem, but it wasn't because of teleportation. This is a documented case that occurred in New York City in 1950. A man was in Kansas, in the state of Kansas, in 1879. He goes to his local restaurant to have something to eat. Now, earlier that day, he went to the general store to buy some items. And in those days, they gave you like a little receipt, because he paid cash for some whatever, and he put it in his coat pocket. So he had a receipt that had his name and the price of the object and the date, 1879, it was whatever, in Kansas. He goes to his restaurant, has something to eat, then he goes out for a walk, right? He wants to have a little exercise. He's never seen again. Disappeared. And they reported that in that local area, that so-and-so went out for a walk and no one ever saw him again. They don't know what happened to him. In 1950, the man materializes in New York City on Times Square, which is a very busy intersection if you've ever seen pictures of Times Square. A cab is coming at him. He doesn't know what's going on. The cab kills him, hits him and kills him. When they look at the body, the police naturally want to identify who's the person, so they can identify the family. They take out the receipt, and it's like so-and-so from 1879. They researched it, and they found out that that person in fact, disappeared in 1879. So what killed him? Was it teleportation? No, it was a New York cab driver. A lot of people are killed by New York cab drivers. It wasn't the technique, okay? So teleportation is perfectly safe. All out-of-body experiences are perfectly safe. In the history of mankind, in the last 150 years of research plus of out-of-body experiences, there's never been a case of any physical, psychological, mental, or any other harm to anybody going through out-of-body experience. In fact, it's a spiritual experience. If more people did it, we wouldn't have as many crazies in the world. You know, it's a beautiful experience to have. Yes?
Sir, what is levitation?
Levitation is actually the beginning phase of teleportation. Think of it. A person is levitating up. In your literature, your religious literature of this country, levitation is a biggie, isn't it? You're levitating, you're raising up off the earth. If you take it much farther, you now teleport. So levitation is the beginning phase of teleportation. Okay? Yes?
During astral travel, are the astral travelers subject to attack by astral beings, entities?
Very good question. The answer is yes, if you go to the lower astral plane. But every other dimension is fine. See, all these dimensions we talk about, they're all positive. There's only 2 dimensions in the universe that are negative. The lower astral plane is where these psychic attackers live, right? These demons, whatever you want to call them, gargoyles or whatever. And the only other dimension that's negative is the earth plane. Think about it. You know, I'm being serious. Do you not see negativity on this planet? Okay? There's a lot of negativity. But all the other dimensions, if you don't go to the lower astral, when you go out of the body, you are going to have a fun trip. I've been to all the dimensions. In fact, in my Exploring the Fifth Dimension book, as well as my Astral Voyages, I detail all the characteristics of the various dimensions, so you know where you are. Like, here's an example, just one little snippet. You're driving in a car in the mental plane. Now, the mental plane is where the masters go. You know, the Krishnas, the Moses, the Jesus, the Buddhas, they all hang out there. And you look down at the road, and you see iridescent blue highways. Okay? Where are you? There's only one dimension that has iridescent blue highways. That's the mental plane. Because their dirt is blue, an iridescent blue color, and they make their roads from the dirt as we do, so it's iridescent blue. See? So there are certain characteristics. Every dimension has sounds to it that you can deal with. Like when you hear the roar of the sea, like a seashell to your ear, you're on the astral plane. The upper astral plane has the Astral Museum, which has all the technology of the future. That's where people like Bill Gates or a Da Vinci or an Edison or an Einstein go to. And I've been there too. That's where I developed the superconscious mind tap and progression therapy. I went to the museum on the upper astral plane. It's a humongous building. It's beautiful. And there's tons of things there to help you learn about what's going to happen in the future. You can take that information and use it in the current situation. And people have done that. It's been reported actually throughout literature. So the upper astral plane, every dimension has learning temples. This is very interesting. You go to a learning temple and you can access your Akashic records or the Akashic records of the universe. You can perceive the Big Bang Theory and all the other stuff going on. So all these dimensions do have learning temples, and they're all spiritually based, except for the lower astral plane. And you know you're on the lower astral plane because it's very noisy. It's filled with weird, ugly-looking entities. Okay, it's the only dimension that has that. And there are people picking on each other, and, you know, it's not fun. All these dimensions, when you're out of the body, as I illustrated on the videotape yesterday, you communicate by telepathy. That's how you communicate. So when you hear that, when I asked Gina from the Blue Eagle Life, I said, how do you communicate? And she said, telepathy. That's an out-of-body experience. Today, on the earth plane, there are very few people that can communicate telepathically, right? But on the fifth dimension, everybody can. That's how you communicate. Yes?
These different planes, what you explained, physically, how they are located with respect to the earth plane?
Well, the astral plane, think of it this way. There's an old expression, it's called a Hermetic expression, that comes from ancient Egypt, that says, as above, so below. Right? Now, what that means is that if you were to go to the astral plane now, let's say you went to the upper astral plane, you would create the environment of the earth on the astral plane, because that's what's familiar to you. When people, for example, do out-of-body experiences, they practice in their bedroom, they're playing a tape or they're doing meditation, and their bedroom is now going to be recreated on the astral plane. It's going to look just like their bedroom, except there are going to be some differences.
Sir, I could see all the frequencies and I changed from 1 to 5. The fifth frequency was the best one for me.
Okay.
So I changed to 5. So
You concentrate on number 5. That has been given to your higher self through your subconscious. And during the dream levels at night, that's when the switching will occur.
Okay.
Now, the various differences from that frequency to the others will be the way you tell when you make your switch. It won't happen immediately. It may take several months for this. But there are certain events from frequency 5 which were very different than the others, right? When you start to see those manifest, then you know you're on the right frequency. So let me explain what happens to the others. You might say, what happens to the other frequencies? You see, your frequency 5 may be your best, but frequency 1 may be somebody else's best. So you're still going to be on frequency 1, 2, 3, and 4, except you're not going to be aware of it. You're only going to be aware of frequency 5. If you were aware of all these frequencies at one time, you know what we'd call you? Schizophrenic. I'm serious. Actually, that's a key joke, but psychiatry today, what they label as schizophrenia, I am not the only one who feels this way. Fred Alan Wolf, the quantum physicist, and many of my other colleagues agree that when people have audible hallucinations, they hear voices in their head, what they're really getting is information from parallel universes. What they're really being is like they're trapped between elevator floors. But modern medicine doesn't consider that. They don't consider parallel universes or spiritual energies. They just consider them to be crazy. So basically, you exist on all these universes at the same time. There's an infinite number. I just use 5 as a range because there's 5 major categories, an infinite number of each category. And you don't just dematerialize in the other frequencies because people have to be there. You have a family, friends, whatever. What would Guruji do if you disappeared, right? I mean, you know, you got to have, people have got to have you there, right? Who would bring me my water here? Okay. But you will be aware. Only what you're aware of is it doesn't matter what happens on the other frequencies. Like, for example, if you get killed on another frequency in 6 months, so what? You're not going to be aware of it. You're going to be on another parallel universe. So,
okay, and once I've done the switch in frequency, which I've done now, and that's all I need to do, right?
That's all you need to do, right? The rest of it will happen by itself. Just a matter of time. Just be patient.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay.
When you say connect to the frequency, how to connect to the frequency? Because you are not showed us any graphical things how it is get connected. So directly when you say connect to the first frequency, second, third, fifth and all, it is very difficult to visualize that.
Okay, well, you don't have to visualize it. What you're really doing is giving the instruction to the higher self. You see, what you do here during the session doesn't really make much of a difference. What really matters is what happens when you go to sleep at night. So even if you visualize nothing during this, it doesn't matter. You've now been implanted into your subconscious, like a computer programming, a specific instruction. When you go to sleep tonight, your subconscious mind is going to go to the upper astral plane. You're going to go to a big conference room with your higher self, and your higher self is going to sit there and lay out the videos of your frequencies. You see? But it won't do that unless you request it. So what we're doing here is requesting it. So don't worry about the details. I don't want you to make this a performance pressure. Just like visualization. If you don't visualize anything on any other technique, it doesn't matter. As long as your subconscious mind has the instruction, and as long as you go out of the body at night, which you do automatically, you can accomplish anything. You see? Society is too performance-oriented. This is not a performance test. So don't worry about it.
So again, a continuation of that question. What is the meaning of first frequency, second frequency, third, fourth, like that?
Okay, these are parallel universes. The concept may be unusual for you, but physics today, quantum physics especially, has